dear teacher, dear community, dear friends. We're on our last day of the Earth Holder Retreat here at Deer Park. The theme, we are the Earth walking on Earth, and it's March 1st in the year 2020. Start with some reflection on time. We seem to have a very clear understanding of what time is. We're saying the date. I brought a little clock to make sure I knew the time, but there's a bigger clock over there, even easier to see, so it's 3 minutes to 11. But what does that tell us? It was an invention that was designed after the Industrial Revolution, and the functioning of the factories needed workers to come in on a large scale at the same time. So we had to have more clocks. And as transportation started to spread and local communities had their own time zones, and then the train company in England said it's very unpractical that London and Leeds and all these cities have different time zones, make it very confusing for travelers. So they standardized it. So we think we know what time is, right? With the brothers, we saw a series of documentaries recently. It's called The Fabric of Cosmos, a couple years ago. And they were sharing that, we think we know what time is. It goes in this linear motion from beginning to end. And it has a beginning, it has an end, and it goes by day. But we physicists, we have no idea of what time is. Wow, that was interesting. I won't go into the rest of the documentary, but these moments when we realize that we take so much for granted, we have so much trust in our perceptions that we know what time is. And we also believe that we have a certain set of time. And when impermanence happens, which it always does, we're kind of surprised. What happened? Right? And so that's one of the reasons why Buddhism isn't that much into beliefs and having doctrines and ideology, but have a practice to realize what is going on in the present moment. For me, when I first heard the Buddha's teaching in a practice retreat center environment, I got so much confidence just because of this. It's so clear that he just observed life and how his mind works, how society works. He understands suffering, the cause of suffering, and that there is a possibility of ending suffering. And there's a path leading to it. It was so clear. I feel like, wow, my confusion. I've been looking for something. I can feel like this path opening up, that the Buddha already tread the path and opened it up, and it's been transmitted for over 2,500 years. Based on his own direct experience. No one could teach him what he learned. And so as we're organizing a retreat, we're also needing to take into consideration time, how long we get to allow everyone to sleep and so on, when to start and end certain activities. So it's very practical, it's real. But even with that, there's our experience of time is not a static thing. So if we're in a situation and a place where we're really like just being present, we're dwelling, our frame of reference of time is very different from if we're in the city, we're running after the bus, we're taking the bus to catch the train. Our experience of time, our experience of space is very different. And so as we're practicing mindfulness and coming back to our breath, what is going on in this moment, we have a chance to start recognizing actually time and space is not as concrete and solidified as we think. We can experience the warping of time, and also seeming like distances doesn't seem to affect us. So this morning, the Dharma talk is supposed to be in the oak grove. But things change, so we have really cold weather, so we say, okay, it's not going to be comfortable to sit outside for the talk and the closing ceremony today. So we change. There's no like blaming the weather. There's no like criticizing. Why couldn't you wait until tomorrow? We planned this. We really want to have it in the oak grove. Just okay. Let's change. We just. And some things become easier, and some things maybe become we have to be inside again. That was one aspiration when the Earth Holder retreat team came together. We said we want to spend a lot of time outside. Because maybe we all feel like that's when we're able to touch that we are the earth, walking on earth. Now it feels a little bit more difficult to touch that I'm an outcrop of the earth than from when I'm sitting on a rock up on the mountain. You know, all these man-made, human-made objects in between. But still, everything is the earth, right? Where else did it come from? Right? But one of the aspects I appreciate with the oak grove, it helps me to warp my experience of time. Sometimes on a day of mindfulness, I go out into the oak grove and spend some time either just laying on the ground or leaning against an oak tree. And just leaning against a tree that's been growing there well before we came, and maybe some of them even more than 100 years. And then you're having a Cooper's hawk swooping by. And knowing that native peoples have lived on this land is clear, evidence of that. Could this be a couple of thousand years ago? If we take away the electric poles and the pump for the well and some visual features, you can touch that kind of a timeless element to it. We can touch a different time in the present moment. So sometimes I can also feel like my own past, my own experience of the past is also very present in the here and the now. But with the practice of mindfulness, I can recognize, okay, so everything that has happened, everything that my ancestors have experienced, it brings me to this moment. And it has a space in this moment. I don't have to be defined and caught by these experiences and then just being swept away by them. When we have the practice of mindfulness, of concentration and insight, like our sister was sharing, there's a way out. So that's what the Buddha found. He found the way out of the cycle of just repeating habit energies, of just repeating shortcomings. That is creating suffering for ourselves and for others. That is not based in understanding. And so really good news is also that the Buddha, and in later teaching, is also confirmed that we all have Buddha nature, meaning already in us is the capacity to wake up to great understanding and great love. I wanted to continue with sharing a little bit of refuge. What do we take refuge in? To nourish us, to hold us when we have a rough time, to inspire us to go deeper and to go forward. What is our refuge? What do we rely on? What do we return to? So our Buddha nature is a concrete refuge we can return to come back and recognize, there is seeds of understanding in me. There are seeds of love and compassion in me already. And so even if we have a glimpse of that once or twice, those are precious jewels on our path of practice to remember, okay. When we're confused, when we're challenged, when we feel little and vulnerable, we can also take refuge in that, knowing that, yes, this is here, this is my experience right now, it's valid. But there's also something much greater to me. It doesn't define me, whether it's my size, my color, my IQ, whatever we measure ourselves to find if we're good or bad or adequate or inadequate. It doesn't confine us. It doesn't really encapsulate who we are, what we are. So we're going to continue to explore this Buddha nature a little bit when I continue talking about 3 spiritual powers. But first I want to go a little bit into how I take refuge in nature. I think one of the first evenings I went for a walk up the ridge, the sunset ridge here, before it got dark. And I was walking up the hill, and there's a number of fully blossoming lilac bushes. It's part of the Ceanothus family. It is California lilac, sometimes mountain lilac. There's many different varieties and species in the Ceanothus family. And you can smell it from afar. And so I've been enjoying them for the last couple of weeks. It's kind of a special time of the year here. Many brothers and sisters that lived here through the years I've been here, we love the lilac a lot. And we go hiking to spend time with the lilac. On Monday, me and Brother Peace, we took a group of staff members and my mom up to the lilac forest to be in contact with the lilacs in their habitat. And there's something of being with wild plants and animals in their space that just nourishes a lot of confidence and peace in me. And that sense of a connection that I'm part of this wider web of life. I don't have to define myself only as a human being. And so as I was walking up and I was stopping and looking at the flowers, and when you zoom in to one little flower and you have this yellow little stems coming out, it's quite beautiful just in and of itself, but it wouldn't like attract that much attention. It's tiny. But then you have a little cluster, and it's already beautiful. But then you have a branch full of clusters, and then you have a bush full of clusters, and it's just like a fireworks of colors and fragrance. And so I call it the Sangha bush. So I think if we want to change the world for the better, if we want to build sustainable communities and change the status quo, I think this is a good image. We don't have to be the most beautiful and the biggest orchid flower, but we can be a little lilac flower on the bush, on the hillside. So the also of zooming in on even the individual flower that is there is needed to make the collective. But you start zooming out and you start seeing the collective. And then I look over the mountainside and it starts changing the color of the whole mountainside, the lilac bushes along. So it's also that when we flower, we express our innate beauty. And it radiates and it changes the whole landscape like that. So would it be like if we can touch our understanding and compassion, like maybe not 100%, but 10, 15, 20% more than we normally do, and we do together? Oh, we cannot conceive of that would affect people around us. We might have ideas how we want to do, but our activism still seems like such a hard work, and it's a fight and it's a struggle. And I think that way nothing's going to change. We're just moving things back and forth. I read somewhere like you cannot overthrow or take down the master's house with the master's tools, something like that. Maybe you can conquer the house and then you take it over and you make the same mistakes over and over again. Profiting yourself and people close to you, of being angry and violent with people that dare to oppose you. This has happened for a long time already, like we heard in the Q&A yesterday too. And so it might be easy to kind of discourage and tell ourselves a story that human beings are these greedy, violent creatures. And so that's why it's so important that we don't buy into that. It's so important that we remember that, yes, I have the qualities of awakening in me already, just waiting to blossom. And so when I reflect on refuge, is a place or a situation, maybe even a person that can help relieve suffering, that can bring happiness, bring a sense of reassurance and safety, that can relax and let go and come back to a deeper truth of what I care about, a deeper truth of what I want to be about. And so this refuge can come, in many ways. Our breath can be our refuge, or our mindful step, gathering with friends and playing music, gathering to do art, gathering to cook, gathering to help someone in need. Just listen to each other. We see when we come on a retreat and we take the time to just listen to each other in Dharma sharing, there's some kind of closeness and connection that can start happening. I think that's what blew me away with practicing in the Sangha when I first encountered the a more communal element of practice. I was thinking, wow, it also opened up these possibilities I couldn't dream of from my own little corner. So like stepping into the world, stepping into places of refuge, and taking refuge meaning then to arrive and to feel at home in that space. That we're not longing to be anywhere else. We're not running away from what we're experiencing. When we bring that with us and we have a place that we can put it down and we can help transform it. So where this kind of space where we can feel rejuvenated, we can relax, our suffering can be relieved, our happiness can be revitalized, is clearly a place where there's love already. Wherever it is in nature, or hugging a tree, looking at the clouds and the stars, sharing with a good friend, whatever it expresses itself for us, where we feel drawn to seek refuge. If those elements are there, it's a precious place, it's a precious situation, it's a precious person, and we all need that. And so it also forces us to let go of our kind of sense of self, of who we are and what we're about, how we define ourselves. There was one trip I went on in Indonesia with Sister Changkong, a couple of older sisters, and me and Phap came along. And we led a retreat together and a couple of events. And then somehow without us knowing, Sister Changkong had organized another 5 days of events for us in Indonesia. And she needed to go home to Plum Village for some activity, some reason. So she signed us up for another 5 days. We were in and out of Jakarta's airport like every day during those 5 days. It's an island kingdom, so it's island nation, so you would fly to different islands. And we found ourselves in Sumatra one evening. And we spent the day with hundreds of school kids. And in the evening, it was a public talk. And so me and Phap we'd planned ahead, so he would give the first 15 minutes to open up the space, and then I would share another 45 minutes to an hour or something. But there was 850 people there. And so we were Dharma teachers in training by that time, 6 years as a monk or something. So it's a little bit daunting. We're sitting in the room kind of waiting for time, and there's all these other Buddhist monks showing up. I was sitting the whole first row later during the talk. It's like, oof. So this moment I was like, can I do this? Like, no, I'm not going to do this. So this moment as I was coming up and bowing, there was like, okay, just let Thay and the ancestral teachers take care. I'm not going to do this. And somehow it worked. Yeah. Also, it's fun to work with Phap Day. It's very easygoing, make people laugh and open their hearts. And Brother Phap was there to translate for us too. And so this, we might think what we're capable of is this. But when we find refuge and we're willing to let go of what we think we can and cannot do, our capacity can increase right away. But of course, we have to have some training, huh? So it also like, I could take refuge in Thay and the teachers because I've been like attending schedule in Plum Village diligently in Thay's talk for like 7 years. So it comes from somewhere. But then also that I'm like, let it go. Me as a self, we're not going to give this talk. It's very reassuring. It's like having your ancestors backing you up, so I'm not sitting up here on my own. You know? So whatever we engage in, whatever we do, we can take moments to like, okay, so who am I relying on in this moment? Who gives me the strength and courage to speak out about things that many people don't want to hear? How do I spend my time and energy going to events that I care about that is helping to bring awareness about the situation of climate change and the people most affected? Yeah. So if we do it as a separate self, we're also going to find other separate selves and we're going to fight, or we're going to blame or criticize. And you come back to this tug of war. And so to take refuge, it means that we can open our heart and we can see a bigger perspective. So our idea of time and space and who we are can open up a little bit. And sometimes maybe we can touch it, and sometimes maybe it's more an idea. We have to keep nourishing that inside of us, that awareness. That's one of the elements I really appreciated during this retreat, of having many activities where we can touch the ancestors of this land, coming from many places, of touching the earth, being on the mountains, coming in contact with Mother Earth, and beginning anew with the earth, as well as doing this 24-hour time travel. So for me, there's many of these activities, I feel like, I can do them more often, and then I will train in a way that it becomes part of me. It doesn't become just this one experience that was great, and then I go back and just continue business as usual. That's the whole thing, right? I love that slogan. It's like striking from business as usual. Because that's really what it's about. So it's this collective awakening. So we have to be skillful in how to bring that about, so we don't just, grab the master's tools again and try to do the same round one more time. And so there is a great being, a bodhisattva, that reminds us of our capacity to awaken. Is the never discouraging bodhisattva, never disparaging. But I thought it's nicer to put it in the positive light, so why don't we call him or her or they the bodhisattva of always encouraging. This bodhisattva goes around into the world and joins their palms and bows. I dare not belittle you. In you I see a great potential. I see a Buddha to be in you. I think we need more of these bodhisattvas around to remind us of who we really are, what our capacity really is. Because we've been told so many other things. We've been discouraged so much. Most of us, in different ways. So the always encouraging bodhisattva. But we have to find ways of transforming our suffering, our difficulties. And so when we touch the earth, we share that we can release whatever burden, tension in our body and burdens in our mind onto the earth. And the earth can transform. And so I've reflected on that. And a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with a couple of lay friends about this. And one of them, who'd been an environmental activist much of his life and then started taking time off to do more retreats, he's saying, I don't want to pour anything on the earth. We poured too much of the earth already. I don't want to add to that. I say, you got a point there. Because you see that it doesn't just go automatically, the toxins, the radioactive waste. It takes thousands and thousands of years. And even the plastic that we dump on the earth, it takes so long to disintegrate and transform, and it spreads around. We have plastic continents out in the Pacific Ocean as large as Texas. So what do we dump on the earth, and how do we transform them? How do we release the tension and the burdens inside of us? And somehow it's just so clear to me when we're talking about this. Once we release it, it's already transformed. My sadness, my grief, my pain is there, and it keeps repeating itself, and I keep reliving it because I'm holding on to it. I haven't released it yet. When I can release it, like, whew, I'm lighter and freer, the earth is lighter and freer, we're all in a better shape. So we have this metaphors of speaking, but we also have to see how do I feel, how do I experience the practice of touching the earth. When I'm in contact with the earth, what is happening? Can I start feeling the connection with the earth? Can that stability and perseverance that is there, the love and life-giving qualities that is there, can it help me have enough trust to let these things go? And so someone asked me how come I started with this Earth Holder blog a while ago, and I was surprised myself. It was in 2013, and I was engaged in the Wake Up movement. I was engaged in building Fourfold Sangha here at Deer Park. I've started teaching more, of being involved in the North America Dharma teachers, of the initiative of starting the foundation. So I felt like, okay, I have plenty of things to engage in. But somehow in this moment of just stillness and not like looking for anything, this question popped into my mind. And it was, if I look back on my life of practice in 10 or 20 years, would I have any regret if I continue like now? And as immediate and clear was the response, it's like, yes, I have to find a way to bring the practice of mindfulness into the realms of climate change. That was before it was catastrophic climate change. Understanding more how quickly it's going. When I grew up, they were talking about the greenhouse effect and then global warming, right? So we've known about this for a long time. But I felt like, okay, so the practice of mindfulness is what I want my life to be about. But I also see this is, currently and going to be the biggest source of suffering for all of us. So we have to how can we reduce suffering? That's why I appreciate in Thay and the Plum Village tradition too, that Thay encourage us to apply the practice to our situation and not to just repeat the sources and the causes of suffering from the time of the Buddha and say birth is suffering, old age is suffering, so on. Sickness and death is suffering. But to see what are the causes of suffering in this time. We can see on many levels. So that was kind of the inspiration behind it. And I asked the Dharma teachers here, because it's not a new idea. Like in 2007 here, we had a ceremony to inaugurate our solar panel. In 2006, Thay talked a lot about consuming less. He had to sit down with the monastics here at Deer Park. Consume less, most important thing. Find alternative fuel transportation means. Combine trips, travel together. Stay home more. So the car-free day was started in 2007 also. And Thay during that tour gave a lot of talks on the impermanence of our civilization. We're talking about suddenly something we've taken for granted just changes and it's like, oops, right? But somehow we think our civilization is different. And so he's inviting us into recognizing that also species do go extinct and civilization do come and crumble. We've seen that already, right? And so not to discourage us, but to wake up from our illusion that the world we know will last forever. Or maybe we're just enduring it now to go somewhere else where we can enjoy the beauties forever. So not to discourage us, but actually to bring us face to face with our fear of death, individually and collectively. And if we're able to do that, what kind of peace can come out of that? That we're accepting that I cannot take another day for granted. So how do I want to live my day? If I know I have 1 year to live, what would I want to spend that year with? So it gives us kind of agency to wake up to this present moment and what is our deep aspiration, what want to express itself. But we also have to be still. We have to know how to still ourselves to hear that voice. And so I started writing the blog. I didn't know what I was doing. I was an environmentalist. I didn't know much about the topic, but I felt like so many of the practices we have already is already coming in contact and have reverence and love and care for the earth, the natural elements, for all beings. And many other gathas that we have is helping us to become mesmerized and in awe of how things are. And turning on the tap, water comes from high in the mountains. Water runs deep into the earth. Miraculously, water comes to us and sustains all life. And so, in the teaching and practice I have been learning already, there's so much resources to just bring into this arena. And I don't want to say surprised, I didn't have an expectation, but all kinds of friends start popping out of the woodwork, as Phap would say. And some of them are here now. And one good friend that popped out too, well, she was there all along, I just didn't know her, is Yena from Washington State, from Oregon. And she shared with me that she had been doing environmental work for a long time. She's an OI member, but she felt very lonely in the Sangha. She didn't feel like anyone kind of shared her aspiration. And so she started joining in, and as I was getting to know her more, she said that she bring herself and the practice to all kinds of rallies and environmental movements in her region. And she say that she's known by the nickname, the lady with the bell. So I want to take a moment to remember and celebrate Yena as a part of the Earth Holder community. She was supposedly to come on the New Mexico retreat in 2017, but had to cancel last minute due to severe illness and sudden, and passed not long after. So it's also this reminder that, okay, my life is impermanent in this body, in this experience of life is impermanent. How long will it stay? What will I leave in my days in terms of my actions, like Sister Dangin was sharing about? And she continues through her daughter that's here with us. So I want to continue to share a little bit about these three powers that we've been starting to touch already. So the first spiritual power is love. And I mentioned some of the characteristics of love already, that of being able to bring well-being, the capacity to be able to relieve suffering. There's the compassion aspect in love. And there's a place for joy also in love. And also what is sometimes talked about as sympathetic joy, to rejoice with others. So like, your happiness is my happiness. And can you make my happiness your happiness? So it's like the lilac again, the happiness can continue to improve and grow. We don't have to fight. If you're happy, I cannot be happy. But sometimes we think like that. We're jealous. Oh, it's like, no, he's better than me, or she gets to do this. How about me? I don't get to do that. You know? So this separation, this competition, this jealousy is taking us away from just rejoicing in each other's successes. So this is a very important part of love, I feel, especially in the culture and the society where competition and individualism is so trained in us. So we've been trained in a certain way just through how our society works. I started understanding this better. I was reading some articles on different medias, how they change us. It was talking about the internet, but it was also referring to a book written by a man when the television and the telephone showed up. And it was saying how that affects our human experience and perception. And not just the content of what we see on the television, but actually like watching the television. I grew up watching the television, maybe not as much as the children watch screen nowadays. So it kind of takes us away from like creating culture like together, like singing songs, doing skits, and going on adventures. We sit in front of the screen, it's like coming this way. So we've been trained into passivity a little bit, right? So how do we engage? And like, okay, let's form a circle and hold hands and sing and dance. We don't have to go to a concert, right? See someone else perform. Living in community, you get a lot of experience with this too. We have our own sports games going on, It's volleyball and there's hiking and there's fast walking to the gate. We even had a marathon here. I'll tell you more about that another time. And so the second part here is understanding. So if we have a view of who we are, like we've been exploring, if I'm me, I am this body, this is it. When this body disintegrates, I become nothing, and I come from kind of nowhere at conception or at birth. If I have that belief, we have a kind of what we say wrong understanding. We don't understand yet who we are. So we use the metaphor of the ocean and the wave. So as this separate self, I would say, like I'm a tall white man from Sweden. I'm this kind of wave, right? There's tall waves, there's shorter waves. Some waves are strong, so they go far up the beach, and some barely make it to the sand. And so there's this, in what we call the historical dimension, there is these aspects. You can see these differences. There is a kind of a birth, and there is a kind of a death. Because something is changing dramatically, right? And also with a wave. Like, wow. But then it changes, and what happened is pulled back out into the ocean. So like this wave is always part of the ocean. Sometimes there's a little bit more mixture of air in here, and sometimes a little bit more mixture of sand, and then most of the water goes back into the ocean. And so that's what we talk about, transcending notions of birth and death. That we're not the separate selves that are born and that die, but we're part of a web of life that cannot be defined by these concepts. So understanding in Buddhism is not to be caught in views, in dualistic notions. And Sister Dangnu was also sharing some of these notions that we have, and some of these pairs. So the pairs of opposite of birth and death, of being and non-being, they cannot really describe what is going on. So when we have this kind of understanding, we can easier cut through our afflictions. And so, for me, it takes some amount of love to understand. If I don't have like any interest to understand, I'm like perfectly happy and fine with the views and ideas I have currently. That's like, okay, that's it. But if I do want to understand someone better, there's already kind of a kindness in there. There's already love in the intention of wanting to understand more deeply. But then also when we can understand someone, a person's individual suffering, for example, then we can also love them better. We can love them more appropriately. So we might have grown up with sayings like, love is treating others the way we want to be treated. But that doesn't always work, right? Yeah. If I would suggest to some of my brothers, let's go on a hike on a lazy day. And some would like it, and some wouldn't be very happy if I forced them to come along, you know? So if it's not bringing happiness, if it's causing them to suffer, is it love? So this is where understanding and love has a close interplay, where life can become more beautiful, more good, and more true. And so let's look into a little bit more of cutting through afflictions. We have to first recognize what are our afflictions, right? And maybe we can talk about cutting through afflictions as throwing away as well, or simply transforming. We want to transform at the base. And so one of our afflictions, one of our sources of suffering is our fear. And fear has a place. A good friend, he says, when I'm fearful, I know I love myself. Because I want to protect myself. I want myself to be safe. So if something happened that make me feel fearful, I know, it's the response because I want to keep myself safe. But if we stop there and then that happens very quickly. That from fear, from sadness, anger shows up. Or we might just like remove ourselves. It's not always that we step up in anger. But so how can we get in contact with our fear? And so there's many ways. The Buddha devised these 5 remembrances for us to practice. Like I was mentioning, we are the nature to grow old and to have sickness and to die, to be separated from everyone and everything we cherish. And the Earth Holder have a set of 7 that also talk about extinction of species, of ending of our civilization, as a way for us to train to come in contact with our fear. So we can practice when fear is already in us, but we can also practice when we're like solid, we're calm, and we can more clearly see our afflictions on a deeper level to be able to cut through them. So we're not defined by them, we're not taken back and forth by them. And so as we're sitting and breathing in and breathing out and knowing that everyone I cherish today, I have to be separated from. Again, in this historical dimension, we can find ways of feeling connected. Even if my grandparents and my father have passed, I can still find ways to be connected with them. But there's this fear of losing what we cherish. And so the natural environment also gives us opportunities to practice with our fear. I was, not long ago, I was up in the mountains with a good friend and his family, and on the way down, we came across a huge rattlesnake. And it was like, just around the bends. I could just barely stop out of striking distance before, coming into the bend. And because I've been training with rattlesnakes for 14 years or so, I said, okay, I recognize the sensation in my backbone. It's like this, kind of alert, all hands on deck kind of message that I have to think about it. Actually, to spot rattlesnakes is much more efficient if I don't think at all. So like mostly if I go through, more tight passages, I'll make sure that there's not someone that's not familiar with the mountain. I haven't trained in rattlesnake fear relief already to go first. But in the beginning, I looked left to right, up and down, scan like back and forth. And I thought, from sticks and crevices in the earth or something. If we haven't faced our fear, all kinds of objects will pop up and we feel fearful, but there's actually nothing to fear. There's just a habit of fear. We can talk about this of grief, of sadness, of anger, as also as other afflictions or states of mind that is causing suffering. That's not helping us to deeper understanding. And so practicing with befriending snake, I had a little bit too close of an encounter once. There was a evening I had together with Thay, we were interviewing 2 aspirants, pre-aspirants. We're interviewing them, and they're both become bhikshus by now. And it was very joyful. I had a lot of love in my heart, and I was exiting the Venerable's tea room. I put on my right shoe, it's fine. I put on the left shoe, it's like, oops, something, one point piercing my fourth toe. And so I reached down, I took the shoe from underneath, I shake it out, and I couldn't believe it. There was clearly a young black diamond rattlesnake coiled in front of me, just enough to fit in my shoe. But I saw it. It was like clear, like I saw a snake. That was like clear. But in my mind, I'm still denying it. Couldn't have been a snake. It's just one spot. They have 2 fangs, so it's like just one spot. And then it didn't hurt that much, maybe like a wasp sting. The only other friend was a relative of one of our brothers that helped build the stupa, and he didn't know about rattlesnakes, so even it rattled, and he didn't know, and he continued, and it bit him. He said it was more painful than being shot by a bullet. So it was like, ooh, that's, So it couldn't be a rattlesnake, right? Because this is my experience, this is my notions of what a rattlesnake bite should be like. It's 2 fangs and it should hurt a lot. So the rattlesnake, no, it cannot be. It must be like a scorpion or a spider or something. It can't be a rattlesnake, right? And so we also all have the seed of denial in us. just because of the information, the views that we have been exposed to, we just don't see certain things. Even we're intelligent, but certain things we just blank them out, consciously or unconsciously. They don't appear to us. And so I think this is a big challenge in both the social justice movement and in climate justice and catastrophic climate change movement, of how to show the reality of how things are in a way that we can start seeing it and recognizing, actually that is what is going on. There is discrimination right in front of my nose every single day because of color. I never lived in society out there, but enough people come here and I go out enough to see it. Yeah, it's happening. And so how can we train ourselves to see what we're not yet seeing? And in order for us to do that, we also have to come together with groups that have a similar experience to us. Sometimes I join with brothers in making a tall monks club. Sometimes it's nice to be able to be with other brothers. I could just look like this and we see eye to eye and have the same perspective on things. There's a certain closeness just because of that physical feature. There's a certain particular closeness that comes with it. When I go to Sweden, I'm with Swedish people. There's also okay, we share a culture and a language, and there's something that is very in me that I feel very close to them. Even strangers in the street, because I lived away from for so long. So I'm aware of this in a way that they're not, right? And so especially if we've been in groups that have undergone suffering, it's important also to be able to have these spaces of refuge where we can be with others that have gone through the same, that can relate to us, that won't question. It's really? Was it that bad? I was it's really, can we get over that yet? But it's clear also that the occupation of this land and the pushing away and the killing of the indigenous people we haven't made peace with that. We haven't begun anew yet. That's why it cannot change. Same with slavery. It hasn't, we haven't been able to recognize all the shortcomings of our ancestors. So I would like to invite this teaching from the first evening back in to the circle of, you remember the rabbits and elephants? What do they like? Ice cream, yes. So we have rabbits. Recognize. And so the example I was just telling, it happens for us all the time. We think we'd recognize something if it's right in front of us. In the teachings is also challenged in saying if the Buddha was right in front of you, would you recognize them? We say for sure. But there's stories that actually that didn't happen. So, this is talking about wrong perception, that we have wrong perception. And our perception is also based on our previous experience and our views. And so in all goodwill, we can not notice sufferings in other people that we just cannot recognize yet because we haven't understood. We haven't looked into our own biases, our own views, our own kind of holding on to this identity of how life is. And we think it's like that for everyone. And so the and is accept. It doesn't make us a bad person, huh? There's people that have a lot of love and care, but maybe just goes to a couple of people or people that look like them. And then might be a lot of hate and discrimination to people that don't look like them. Doesn't mean that they're inherently a bad person. They still have Buddha nature. So how do we relate to people that do not see our suffering, that treat us poorly? So they can help to recognize and accept and embrace. And so this is very important that we remember, and we keep practicing this, especially to recognize our affliction, to understand them. We transform them through understanding them. They don't just come from nowhere. Even the climate crisis doesn't just come from nowhere. It's all kinds of causes and conditions. And the reason why we haven't been able to respond collectively for several decades, many decades, is also not just because we're ignorant and, violent and greedy. Partly that. But it was interesting. I heard that humans have evolved to be very skillful in dealing with these like moment-to-moment dangers and threats. And we can come up with solutions for things that's like in our face. But there's kind of like a cognitive dissonance that can happen with assumptions so big. We might say, no, we cannot cause this. And it's gone through fluctuations. Maybe we're fearful of actually seeing things as they are. So we just don't see it. We don't recognize what is going on. We're not willing to recognize and accept that actually it's human activity on this planet that's changing the atmosphere, that is causing climate change and disruptive weather patterns. And so when you're in the midst of an area like that, you start seeing, actually there's something going on here. And so sometimes we might feel guilty when we're aware of this, and we know that maybe we've contributed to this as well, or our ancestors. For a while, I tried to be 100% vegan, a couple of years. And I tried already in Plum Village when I was a novice, and I kind of, I'm not going to eat the cheese and the butter that was still on the table at that time. But after doing that, I felt good, because I see it had a direct impact on my health. I felt I had a direct impact on my compassion. The climate wasn't as much of a clear player in the vegan movement at that point in time. But I could also see my mind start judging and looking at others, like, is he taking cheese? And so there's this slight comparing that, I'm better. I'm contributing less, And so I saw that was very dangerous. And I thought, I'll open the door, I'll start eating butter this winter. And I explore that back and forth. I'm still doing that. But I also recognize that intention of really wanting to be vegan as much as possible, it also comes from the fact that my first 29 years of life, I ate so much meat. I ate so much dairy, I ate so much fish. I drank a lot of alcohol, so I've contributed to the, using a lot of resources. I travel across the world for a week of vacation, like I wouldn't consider now, because I've recognized and realized a different reality. So it's also interesting to see, what are the things we care about, and what is it that brings us to the plate to care about this, So we don't fall victim for righteousness and for blaming and criticizing others for not doing what we're doing, right? And I think a couple of affliction that drain us from a lot of energy is guilt and shame. Actually, in the Buddhist psychology, shame internally and shame in front of others is a wholesome mental formations. So I was very confused about this when I was a novice, and I asked an older brother, how come? Shame, really? It seemed like such a destructive, down-going spiral. How can this be a wholesome mental activity? And he was saying, it's like you recognize you're not skillful, you cause harm, you want to do better. Really? That's shame. I don't think that's not how I relate to shame. So the way I relate to shame, what I heard some recent definitions to, is shame is to think that we are bad. And guilt is to think our actions are bad. And so with that definition, I wouldn't say that then that kind of shame is a wholesome mental formation, but that kind of recognizing our shortcoming, to being accountable and wanting to do better, that's super wholesome. If we can have that in front for ourselves and in front of others. And if we can also touch that to kind of give ourselves a break for the shortcomings, we didn't know better at a certain point in time, or maybe our parents didn't know better, or our neighbors didn't know better, people that we associate with. So not to hold on to that guilt or that shame of who we are, we're bad. It can free up a lot of energy for doing beautiful things. So with that kind of a authentic regret of wanting to do better, that can also open other people's hearts, because we're not like thinking like, I know, I got it down, I'll tell you. So if we want to build communities, and we want to build skillful groups of engaged action, we have to be solid in our own practice. We have to be kind. We have to be loving. We have to also be like knowing when it's the right time to speak out, and also speaking out in the way that is not coming out of our frustration, our anger. We need to practice with our frustration and anger, our impatience of like, it has to change, it hasn't changed, And so I think if we're in a group that have undergone as much suffering or the same suffering, we also have a role to play. But we all have to learn how to come back to ourselves, to nourish these spiritual qualities, these spiritual powers of love and understanding. And so it's with this process of recognize, accepting, and embrace that we can also start to look more deeply. And insight will follow. So this is also helping tell a story of how change can happen, right? We have to fill these into these intersections here. They're zones of freedom, where cutting through affliction and love interact. There's zones of freedom where understanding and cutting through afflictions interact. And same here. Here's the diamond that cuts through illusion right here. And so we have to be careful what stories we take in and what stories we tell internally. So training to get along and to work together harmoniously with strength and commitment without uniting because of an outside enemy, that is a collective awakening already. Some activists shared with me that they get together, they find a target, and then they go after the target, and as long as they do that, they're together. But actually, they're fighting among themselves. They're not really getting along. So they're not offering a solution to the world, right? So this is the kind of a tall order for all of us. How can we offer another story for the world that is of rejoicing in each other's strength, of helping each other out, of sharing what we have, of caring for the weaker ones, and to understand how things come about. And so to close, I'd like to share an interaction we had with Thay, our teacher in Blue Cliff in 2011. There was a group of us that are going to go on the first wake-up tour in the U.S. on the East Coast, kind of during the U.S. tour. And so after the retreat in Blue Cliff, we went to say goodbye to Thay, and we had a cup of tea. And after a while, Thay started looking at his hand and his fingers. He showed it to us. So when you go out on this tour, you have to see yourself as the fingers of one hand. He knew that many of us were very capable, but also ambitious, and I think I can say stubborn or strong in our will. So that, okay, how do you work together then? You know, how do you learn to yield for each other's views too and get along in a way that's constructive? And seeing the thumb and the long finger and the index finger, all the fingers have a role to play, but maybe they cannot play the same role. So whoever seemed to be the stronger also lift the weaker one up. No, Pinky, you very valuable. You need to be with us. We cannot do this without you. Instead of the thumb saying, okay, I don't need the rest of you. I'll do this on my own. And so there's so much more I could share. There's been such a rich retreat. Many different themes have come up. And I hope that we can all continue to practice as the rabbits and elephants, to recognize, accept, embrace, look deeply, so that insight can be generated. And then we can open up space and time and act in a way that actually is worthy of our human continuation. And then we don't have to have a firm outcome of what will happen. But we don't regret because we've done our best and we really put our heart into making something beautiful together. And who knows? You seeing the lilac on the mountain? A tiny little flower coming together and changing the colors and the fragrance of the whole valley.